What's up, y'all? Countercultural Life, episode 583. Not quite yet, but we'll get there eventually. My my main man, my dude, my guy, Noah, is not on this podcast. This is a single soul episode, but he is deep in my mental in the microphone. I can hear him in the background if there's anything that he wants to remind me of during this episode. But what we wanted to do this episode for, we have new listeners. I had somebody in the gym today ask me, he's like, what is the podcast about? Give me kind of the framework. So we wanted to revisit the framework of countercultural life, 4 areas, where they come from, what it's about, what it means. And I'm going to add in also a little bit of the study that I've been doing on the Ikigai. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, what that is in a little bit. But first and foremost, let's walk through the 4 areas. I believe, and this is after lots of study, lots of research, lots of conversations, lots of leadership classes, leadership coaching, a lot of the different spaces, a lot of preaching, sermons, a lot of stuff that I've been involved in my life of almost half a century. I have learned that there is a framework that everybody needs to build from, I believe, to reach a level of wholeness as a person. I use this 4 area framework in my leadership coaching, and I believe it is of mass importance for you to reach health in these areas. But these areas are built from 4 questions that I believe, as a Christ follower, I kind of believe God gave them to me through some research and study and sermons that I'd listened to um, back earlier in my journey. And I believe that everybody at some point in their life will have to answer in a way. These questions will face them. And the first question is tied to the spiritual area, and it is, where did I come from? Like, where am I from? Where did I come from? Not from your mother, not from your dad. Like, where did you come from? Like, where all of this, where does it come from? So that's the spiritual area. Where do I come from? Then I believe we have the mental area. Everybody at some point in their life will have to choose right or wrong. I believe the power of free will. I believe choice is very important. I believe we were designed with choice. We were designed with free will. So the mental space, you have to determine whose side you're on. Are you on the good side? You're on the bad side. Some say good, some say evil. You have to choose. And some people are like, well, I'm just going to live a good life. But there'll be a point that you come to that you have to determine what side you're actually on. I believe everybody has to pick a side. So that's the next part. That's the mental space. Then we get into the emotional space. The emotional space is where identity is found at. It's where the emotions are. It's what am I here for? Like, what am I here for? So where am I from? That's spiritual space. Who determines right and wrong? That's the mental space where you got to think. And then you have the emotional space, which is, what am I here for? Everybody has to answer that question in life. There's a lot of people trying to answer that question even right now. You might have turned and flipped over, found this on YouTube, found this podcast, this crazy dude talking about 4 areas. Well, this is what it's about. You might have ended here by design. What am I here for? You've been trying to figure that out. You've been researching, you've been reading, you may have been praying, you've been trying to figure out what you're here for, what you were designed to do. That's the emotional space. That's where I believe identity comes from. I believe that's also connected into where the Ikigai space comes from as well. And then last but not least is the 4th question, where do I go when it's over? Everybody at some point will leave this planet. We will leave this meat suit that we have on, and we will go somewhere. I don't believe it's a fade to black. I believe you will go somewhere. And I believe it's on you and your free will where you choose to go. So that's all I'm going to say about that. We jokingly say not a Christian podcast. I don't even call myself a Christian anymore. I call myself a Christ follower. It's a little bit different to be stereotypes of Christians. Anyway, we're not going to get deep into that. Maybe come back later. We'll talk more about it. Look at earlier episodes. We talked a little bit about it on those earlier episodes. So the physical space, that's the last space. So you have spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. Also, book coming out in 2027 or 8, hopefully, if not later this year. I'm starting to work on it, it's starting to come together, and it's kind of an understanding. I call it the keys to life, and it'll be about all about the four spaces. That's coming out later. So tune in. You heard it here first. Book coming later with these four areas. That's also a way to hold me accountable to actually put the book out by the at least 2028, because that's got to be out by then. If God allows me in the physical space to see that in 2 years, because our tomorrow is not promised, and I don't presume anything, but I do try to do what's right in the physical space. That means try to eat right, take care of myself, eat the right vitamins, all of those spaces together, and you get healthy in those spaces. That is what leads to wholeness as a person. And that's what Countercultural Life podcast is about. It's about society tells you to do this one thing. Society tells you to do life this way. I believe in the greatest leader that ever walked the planet, that followed that I'm following. I believe that he was whole in every area. And I believe that's possible for us to get. We can get very close. We may never get to be perfect, which is what the word teleos, where the scripture wholeness or holy comes from. It means teleos, it means wholeness. I don't believe we may ever get there. Full self actualization is what the psychologists would call it. But I believe that you can get almost completely whole if you learn how to do it, if you learn how to get spiritually healthy, mentally healthy, emotionally healthy, and physically healthy. So, ways that you can get healthy in those spaces, in the spiritual space. I would say, if you are not a follower, I'm not trying to proselytize anybody. If you are not a follower of God, find whatever space you can get in that gets you grounded, that brings you back to center. Some people use meditation. Some people, I had an uncle that would say he loved to get out in the woods and get out in nature, and that's where he got centered. You have to find where you get healthy in that space from. That is a key aspect of spiritual wholeness. What I believe for me, I'll give my examples as well, is a daily walk with God. I could go so deep into walking with God and what that means, and what that word walk means in the Hebrew. I'm not going to do that right now. So much richness, so much depth, so much amazingness in that walk framework. Learning how to hear God and discern His voice. I believe you can do that. I believe that also that learning to hear God is built off of intimacy with God. That's that relational space with God. That's where the spiritual space, that's where you learn to get healthy. You build this into your life. You learn to get healthy in that space, in that spiritual space. I'm not necessarily talking about church. That's what other people say. Well, does that mean I have to be religious? Don't get me started on religion. You visit earlier podcasts where we got into religion a little bit. However, I'm talking about where you connect with your creator, where you get grounded. That's the spiritual space. Learn how to get healthy in that space, whether it's through prayer, silence, worship, meditation, all of them combined, whatever it is. It's getting into that spiritual space. Then the mental space, determining right and wrong. In order to determine right and wrong, you got to figure out how you think first. So, how do you think? How do you learn to think? There's this framework now called metacognition that means thinking on thinking, like not just thinking, but why do you think the way that you think? Why does your mind work the way that it does? And you learn that through, you can do some assessments, personality, psychology assessments, all of that stuff. But really learning about learning how you learn, learning how to think in that mental space. How am I increasing my mental capacity? How am I growing in my skill set? How am I becoming, if it's leadership, I'm a leadership guy. How am I learning how to be a better leader? You know, when you arrive as a leader, never. So, what do you need to be doing to learn? I'm listening to a Marshall Goldsmith book right now on, I believe it's called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. I have been in the space of leadership now, probably 10 to 15,000 hours of teaching leadership, of coaching leaders, a lot of capacity in that area, but I never stop learning in that area. So, mental, that's the mental space. How am I learning? What am I learning? How are you getting healthy in that space? Emotional space. Are you becoming emotionally healthy and relationally strong? So emotional space, learning about your emotions, learning what triggers you, what are your triggering emotions and where do you go? Learning how to frame or label emotions. Instead of you just getting pissed off, you start to say, "Hey, I'm mad. What's making me mad?" That also ties into learning how to think in a healthy way, which is the one we just talked about, that mental space as well. So emotional, what is my emotional state? How do I control my emotions? How do I read the emotions of others? Um, Chase Hughes has some phenomenal work in this area in self-awareness. He says that's a big key to success in life is learning how to read a room. Well, read a room is simply understanding the emotions and nonverbals, mainly emotions of others, reading emotions, reading a room, understanding the emotional content of the room. So you can't get to that space until you really learn how to become emotionally healthy. That's the third space. So we got spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. So as a Christ follower, I believe my body is a temple, and I believe that the things that I put into the temple enable me to operate at my highest capacity. So I'm focused on my workouts. Do I work out? Do you exercise? So much research out there has shown that exercise increases longevity, increases health, increases mental capacity, increases your ability to deal with issues. The healthier you are physically, the more able you are to function at a high level. So we look at the physical space. So that's eating. How do you eat? How do you exercise? What diet, what foods make you operate at a high optimal level, getting away from the processed foods. There's lots of studies out there that can point you to a lot of different spaces. Thomas DeLauer is really good, focused in that space. Peter Attia, you got Dr. Mark Hyman. Those are just a few of them that I follow, listen to. Like, what is it, going back to the mental space, what does your social media feed look like? If it looks like you're just following the celebrities out there or the trends out there, you're missing the mark. So if you have Instagram, is your Instagram building you as a person? Are you following people that grow you as a person, that make you think? Are you following those health spaces that I've listed? Are you following like Dr. Carolyn Leaf with the brain, mental space, emotional space? Are you following that? Who are the spiritual mentors, if you will? Because I have mentors that are physical mentors, not talking about the physical space that I can actually touch if I wanted to, that I could sit down across the table from and have conversations. I have mentors in these four spaces, but also you have long term, you have long distance mentors. Those are the mentors that aren't in the space. That's why I mentioned somebody like Carolyn Leaf, somebody like Thomas DeLauer in the physical space, Peter T in the physical space, in the spiritual space. Who you listen to. Hopefully, you're tuning into Countercultural Life. That we hit all four of these spaces. I mean, why not be on this podcast? This podcast would be amazing for you to listen to, so you can learn about those four spaces. But what about in the spiritual space? What pastors are you listening to? What mental professionals are you listening to? What people are you listening to? Like the only ones coming to mind right now is Carolyn Leaf. I got three or four other people I could think of. Henry Cloud would be another one. Dr. Henry Cloud. Um, just who are you listening to in all of the spaces is key. So lastly, touching back on that physical space, you have exercise, you have eating, you have sleeping is key. A lot of the research is pointing to 7 hours. I know people have said all I need is 5 to 6 and I'm good and I feel good. Let me tell you, as somebody that coaches people that are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, let me tell you, let me look into this camera and tell you young folks like Noah out there. If you don't get your physical space under control now and in the right space right now, your body is less forgiving the older you get. So the more habits right now that you develop that are good habits in the physical space, the less amount of habits you have to break down the road, because if you don't break those habits, when you close in on 40 and 50, your body starts to break down. Your brain's operating at high capacity, but your body can't keep up with the stress, the strife, and the churn of what it's like to lead a family, an organization, a business, a church. You can't do it anymore. Your body will break down. Speaking from experience, I've experienced that, and also dealing with a lot of leaders I deal with in high level spaces, same thing. So spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical are the key spaces that make up what this podcast is about. But as you've listened to this podcast, you see we get into other areas. We like to talk about conspiracy theories a little bit. We may go deeper in there. That's using your mental capacity to think, to be a critical thinker, to learn how to navigate conspiracy theories. We're all going to be in the mental space for that. We're going to talk a lot about church and environment and religion and spiritual growth, spiritual formation. We're going to talk a lot about people that there's this big concept out over the last 5 or 6 years called deconstructing your faith. We're not only going to deconstruct faith, but we're going to teach you how to reconstruct faith, because I believe if you just deconstruct your faith, you're missing the mark. You need to reconstruct it on a proper foundation. So we're going to hit that space in the spiritual space. In the emotional space, you have to figure out what your identity is and what you are here for. The more quickly you are able to do that and find out what your purpose is, the more fulfilled you will live as a person on this planet. I cannot stress that enough. All of the studies and research and leadership and development, spiritual formation that I've done, that I've been part of, all point back to identity. For the Christ followers out there, every hero of faith dealt with identity on some level. I'm challenging you to find one that didn't deal with identity. Anyway, that's all I'm going to go on that. Physical space, we're going to talk a lot about eating healthy, raising kids right. We're going to talk about exercise, sleep. We're going to get some people on the podcast that can be in that space and help us grow in that area. So this space, this podcast, Countercultural Life, is all about becoming the person that you were designed to be. Through all of the things we're going to talk about, all the conversations we're going to navigate. We're already over 25 episodes in, so please revisit those old episodes. Tell us what you want to hear more of. We are the experts in this space. It takes 10,000 hours to get to expert level in anything. And by God's blessing and design, I've been able to hit 10,000 hours in a couple different spaces. So I think I'm able to speak on them a little bit. So come here for advice. We want to be able to give good, solid advice to people on how to lead and navigate their life. That's what Countercultural Life is about. Got the best producer, co-host in the world. His name is Noah. Holler at your boy. He loves Liquid Death. He wants to get sponsored by them. We're working on getting our sponsor by Fear of God so we can get some good Fear of God stuff in. Shout out to Fear of God. So come back, visit us. You want to see this, you want to be part of this. We are going to do big things in this space. Don't miss out. Come back. Countercultural Life Podcast coming at you live from the study studio, aka the Kickback. We will holler at you. Peace.